Creative babble.
Insurance isn't one size fits all, and shopping for it shouldn't feel like squeezing into something that just doesn't fit. That's why drivers have enjoyed Progressive's Name Your Price tool for years. With the Name Your Price tool, you tell them what you want to pay, and they show you options that fit your budget. Enough hunting for discounts, trying to calculate rates, and tinkering with coverages. Maybe you're picking out your very first policy, or maybe you're just looking for something that works better for you and your family. Either way, they make it simple to see your options. No guesswork, no surprises. Ready to see how easy and fun shopping for car insurance can be? Visit Progressive.com and give the Name Your Price tool a try. Take the stress out of shopping and find coverage that fits your life, on your terms. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law.
I don't know about you guys, but I've been loving the World Cup this year. I'm not even a huge soccer fan, but I'm like completely wrapped up in it. And so looking back on my library, trying to think of which episode I should play this week, it hit me. The Greatest Footballer Who Never Played. It is a fantastic episode. It's so fun. It's light. I hope you enjoy it if you haven't listened to it. If you have listened to it, it's been a couple years since I aired it, so it might be new to you again. All right, without further ado, let's play The Greatest Footballer Who Never Played. You know, we've talked about many pretenders on this show, but the guy we are going to talk about today takes the prize, in my opinion. He didn't commit any crimes that I know of, yet he fooled everyone in Brazil and the professional soccer world for decades. Today's episode features the story of Carlos Henrique Raposo, better known as Kaiser, the greatest footballer never to play the game. That's right. This guy is a legend in Brazil, yet somehow he managed to never play soccer. He partied like a star player. He talked like a star player. He even managed to sign with numerous teams during his decades-long career, yet he never actually played a regular game. So how is that possible? Well, it's all told in a 2015 documentary I watched recently titled Kaiser, the Greatest Footballer Never to Play Football. No, this is not an ad for the film. I just watched it on a flight home and haven't been able to stop talking about it. I've made my friends watch it, I've made my family watch it, and now I am going to talk your ear off about it too. In fact, I hopped on a call with one of the film's producers to get the inside scoop. Even if you're not a soccer fan, you are going to find this story fascinating, trust me. I'm Javier Leiva, and this is Pretend. Stories about real people pretending to be someone else. So I saw this video the other day, and a guy invented a little tiny symbol, a real one that clips right onto your car air vent. So instead of air drumming on your steering wheel at a red light, you can actually hit a symbol too. And my first thought was, that is so dumb. And my second thought was, I want one. And my third thought was, why didn't I think of that? Because that's the thing, right? We all have these great ideas, and it's never the idea that stops us. It's the wall, the website, the payment stuff, the boring parts that make you go, maybe I'll do this later. And that's the whole reason why Shopify exists. You bring the idea, and you already handled the hard part on day one. The website, no coding. You pick up a template, their AI helps you out, and the thing in your head is just there, looking just like you pitched it. You bring the idea, and they've already handled the hard part on day one. Then somebody actually buys it, and the checkout is already handled, optimized right out of the gate. And the folks who come back, they buy in a single click. You don't have to lift a finger. And when you get stuck, and you will, there's a built-in assistant called Sidekick. The questions that you're too embarrassed to ask, they got you covered. So go ahead, check out shopify.com/pretend if you're curious. All you need is an idea, and Shopify handles the rest. Start your free trial at shopify.com/pretend. Again, start your free trial at shopify.com/pretend.
My name is Louis Myles. I'm a film producer and director, making everything from television through to featured documentaries and comedies and all those sort of things.
So, Louis, how did you first come across this wild story?
Do you know what? It's kind of one of those stories that you can make a story on making the story.
And he's right. Like I mentioned in the intro, Carlos Kaiser is a legend in Brazil. And like all legends, it's hard to tell fact from fiction. When a colleague told producer Louis Myles about Kaiser, he couldn't believe it.
Rob told us this story about how he'd gone on Reddit one day and found this incredible story about a guy who'd never played football, but had been a footballer for 26 years. And the story was mad. This guy had signed contracts with all these famous clubs in Brazil. He'd do anything to get a contract, anything not to play a game, including faking injuries and hosting all these ridiculous parties, and it becoming sort of the center of
a legend.
Yeah, a legend, like the center of a life in Rio de Janeiro. But I do know a guy called Tim Vickery, who's a pretty famous football commentator that lives in Brazil. So I said, tell us everything you know about Carlos Henrique Raposo, also known as Kaiser. And the smile on his face could have lit up any room. And he said, I've lived in Rio de Janeiro for 21 years, and that's the best story I've ever heard. And we said, well, how much it is true? He said, no one knows, and that's the point, because it is folklore, it is legend. And he said, if you could crack that story, it's the kind of key to everything, because it's just so much more than just a football story.
First things first, Louis Myles and his production team had to fly to Brazil and find Kaiser.
We were either going to come back with a movie or the most expensive vacation of all time.
Exactly. And did you even know the language? Did you speak Portuguese?
No, I didn't speak a word of Portuguese. And so it became like this huge part of all of our lives, really. We sort of had an inkling that we could probably get him. We didn't know if we would. And then we found Kaiser sort of 3 or 4 days in.
Finding Kaiser was just half the battle. Somehow they had to convince him to take part in this documentary film. So they got an idea.
We'd hired this massive party apartment right opposite Sugarloaf Mountain. And so we were like, brilliant. What we'll do is we'll get all the booze in, all the alcohol in. We'll get some music up, we'll wear Hawaii. We'll go to town here. It's going to be great.
Is it a way to lure him in?
Yeah. Just thinking, well, he must be the party animal, right? Because all of his stories were about many, many women and, all these huge parties and carnival and all the rest of it.
And it worked. The soccer legend showed up. Kaiser, who is much older these days, walked in with dark aviator glasses and was sporting this long jet black mullet.
He sort of came in and we offered him whatever, and he said, I've never drunk alcohol in my life. And we're like, okay, well, that's kind of not what we're expecting. And then we started talking about how a deal could work for a film, what we wanted to do. And we were pretty open and saying, look, we don't know how this is going to go, but these are incredible stories. And we think this is kind of like how to fake it in an industry where it's almost impossible to fake it.
And not only in an industry, but in a country that takes so much pride in football. I mean, it's part of their national identity.
Yeah. So for your listeners, the period that he operated in was sort of mid-80s to mid-2000s, right? So, 26 years. Brazil had won 2 World Cups, several Copa America, and the Brazilian league is really strong, right? Because it produces all these players. So you can't just go and sign contracts with the likes of Flamengo and Vasco da Gama and Fluminense and all these clubs without being any good, because they're really good. And then he spent some 2.5 hours telling us the best stories I've ever heard in my life, of which 95% of them could never go in a book or a film, because it was him having either tricking or having a great time with very famous people. Also, he was telling us stories about, him in the football pitch and how actually he was a great player and it was all a bit of a thing to go and get some publicity or the rest of it. And what we kind of worked out in the end was that all the stuff about football was total nonsense. And all the stuff with the very famous people was more than likely true. People like George Michael from Wham would turn up in Rio de Janeiro and Kaiser would show them a good time for the weekend. We were out in a bar one night and this lady just turned up out of nowhere saying, "It's the beautiful man. It's the beautiful man. Oh, he was the best. He was the best sex of my life." And then she got the photos out and it was him, George Michael. And then there was affairs with really famous Brazilian singers, with super famous tennis players from around the world who'd all come to Rio and they'd all know that they would all end up with Kaiser because he would be the guy to go to. He said, we must have dinner. And so, okay, fine. So then we went to one of the most prestigious restaurants in Rio. And we thought, oh, sod it. And we got there and the queue was through the roof. It's a 3-hour wait. And then we were thinking, well, we'll just go somewhere else. We don't mind, whatever. And within 2 minutes, Kaiser had got us the best seat in the house. And we were waited upon like we were royalty. You know, just right at the front, best spot, best everything, loads of free gifts, all the rest of it.
So you're saying like even today he has that clout?
Yeah. I mean, we saved a lot of money on food throughout the production because we could almost walk into any restaurant. Yeah, because his currency was that. I mean, he became the king of Rio. He was this kind of center of cultural life there. We did a shoot with him and it was very funny. He told us these incredible stories about how he tricked mafia bosses and how he would fake his injuries and about his famous friends and about having orgies with Italian prime ministers and all this sort of stuff. And we've raised a lot of money to go on this trip. We've got a great interview with this guy. It's very funny. We're finding it funny, but you're kind of thinking, well, we've raised this cash, but we have no real proof here.
Like you're only getting the wild stories.
Yeah, from people that, you know,
they're not very credible, maybe.
Yeah. And then we managed to get to Carlos Alberto Torres, who's, you know, a very significant figure in world soccer, right? And go to his office and he just says, yeah, I had him at 2 of my clubs. I signed him. Never played him, but he was around causing all this havoc and all the rest of it. And the beauty of this story is you don't know what's true or not, but he was there. I had him. I didn't, you know, necessarily want him around, but he was good for the group and he was all this sort of stuff. And then you think, well, okay, now we've probably got something. And then you start interviewing more footballers who bring their photos of them together or the rest of it. And you're like, well, no, he's there. He's definitely doing this stuff.
During the course of the next 18 months, Louis Myles and the production team went on a wild ride, interviewing everyone and anyone who may have encountered Kaiser during this time period, trying to piece together a timeline of this man's life. And it turns out he really did trick some of these clubs in Rio to sign him. He really was a football player, and he really was protected by the Brazilian mafia.
This probably could only happen if we were at Rio de Janeiro. I'm not sure it could happen anywhere else.
I don't even think it could happen again. Like, it's like he pulled this incredible stunt.
Yeah. But what we ended up finding out was that quite a lot of the stories he was saying was being repeated by other people, and they didn't really deviate too much. But then when you pushed a little bit further, it's quite hard to get anything else out of them. And so we were starting to wonder, is he setting people up here? Like, people seem to be holding it back a bit. So then we started to go and try and find our own interviewees, like really separate from him, not telling him, like coming over like a few days early so he wouldn't know we were there and the rest of it. But he would always find out within a few hours of anything happening.
I think the audience is going to wonder, this guy pulled off this incredible stunt, right? But could he actually even play football? I mean, like, was he athletic or had any talent whatsoever?
So the story goes that Kaiser was absolutely terrible at football. If Kaiser turned up, no one wanted him on his team because he couldn't kick a ball. He had a problem with the ball. He was that bad. Absolutely terrible, right? So how he did it with clubs was he would find a way in. The initial way in is that he looked a lot like a footballer called Renato Gaúcho, who is a very famous Brazilian footballer, but he was a really good footballer, kind of like the star boy Brazilian footballer in the 80s. And Kaiser looked a lot like Renato. They had the same sort of mullet at the back of the head, all the glasses, they all looked good. And so Kaiser was going around Rio de Janeiro pretending to be Renato in nightclubs to pick up woman, and people believed it. They would look so similar. That was it.
Yeah, I remember this one scene in the movie. It was one of my favorite ones that sticks in my memory. Kaiser shows up. They think it's the other footballer, and then he shows up trying to get into the club, and he's like, "No, that you're already in there." It was great.
Exactly. So Renato Gaúcho's at the bouncer, one of the most famous people in Brazil. He's not allowed in the nightclub because they believe he's already in there at his table, but Kaiser's entertaining in there, right? Renato gets wind of this, obviously, because of those scenes, and meets Kaiser. But instead of getting angry at him, thinks, well, the brass tacks on this guy, he's amazing. That fair play to him, he's amazing. And so they become really good friends.
But during this time period, Kaiser wasn't a professional footballer, at least not yet. He was just living the life of one.
Kaiser then really likes the idea of a footballer's life. Now, I don't think Kaiser was poor, but he certainly wasn't rich. In that situation, in that time in Brazil, if he wanted to become rich, he kind of had to become a lawyer, become really good at business, or become a footballer. So instead of doing that to make money, Kaiser pretended to be Renato and pretended to be a footballer to try and get all the best bits of life to live that footballer's lifestyle. And so he became friends with a lot of footballers because Renato plays for the Brazilian national team. And then he likes it so much, he thinks, well, actually, I wouldn't mind being part of a football team and all the rest of it. So he manages to convince them to give him a trial. Now, clubs gave trials all the time and all the rest of it. And if you showed any sort of aptitude, then you were likely to be given a 2-week trial contract. So that would happen quite a lot. He would go in there. He was fit enough to do all the sprinting and all the running and all the rest of it, look really good. And so he would join on those fitness sessions, blast those really well. He's very charming. He's got a lot of good chat. People liked him around, so everyone was really excited. But then when the ball came out, he knew he'd be no good. So he'd pull up injured. But he would always make sure he would do it when the 2-week contract was nearly at the end. And the law at the time in Brazil was that if you passed a 2-week contract, they had to give you a 3-month one and be as an official footballer. That obviously doubt in the mind of the people looking at him because he's not been seen with the ball, but he's quite fit. He's good with the people. Everyone seems to like him. It's probably not worth, not paying him a small amount of money to stay on. And then he'd get the 3-month contract. And then he's in, right? And then he's in a football club. And he's not getting paid very much, but he has a professional footballer's card. And at that point, he can then go into town and go and get all the things that he would want. So he would go and get free food by saying, hey, I have this professional footballer's card. I'm a footballer. I play for the famous Fluminense, don't you know? And all the rest of it. And then he would take out the players, and then they would be in the really top restaurants and in the bars and the nightclubs. And then they would start asking him to do all this stuff. And then his network started. Now he's got influence. He's got cultural influence amongst the whole city. But then obviously, as soon as he started playing with football, he was terrible. They'd had to kick him off, right?
Yeah, but you could only fake your injury so many times, right? But
he would move. So then he would have one real card, and then he would then fake up other cards from other clubs because he knew that would work. But then he'd only need 1 or 2 players to recommend a coach or a scout to say, well, look, he's worth giving a go, right? And then he would try his next trick, and then he would just move from club to club to club really, really regularly. Like, he didn't care. That's why he totted up so many clubs. He had over 30 clubs, around the world.
And that is how Carlos Kaiser invaded the professional football world in Brazil. And if he plans to keep this ruse going, he's going to need some defense. And that coverage came in the form of the Brazilian mafia. We'll get into it after the break.
This episode is brought to you by Accenture. When your advertising operations fall out of sync, everything else follows. Spotify and Accenture are working together to reinvent the rhythm of ad sales, using automation, analytics, and smarter workflows to simplify campaign delivery and access better data across the business. The result? Less time spent on operations, more time connecting brands with the moments and fandoms that matter most. Learn more at accenture.com/Spotify.
What's that, bud? The Lincoln Summer Sales Event is on now with exclusive offers? Oh, so you want to feel the wind pouring through the available open panoramic vista roof on a road trip? And spend the afternoon beachside hanging out on the back of the spacious Lincoln Splitgate? Okay, I'll schedule a Lincoln test drive today, right before your vet appointment. Visit your local Lincoln retailer or learn more at Lincoln.com.
Carlos Kaiser conned his way into many football clubs. You know, at some point, the players and the managers had to know this was all phony, right? But sometimes they didn't seem to care.
And at certain clubs, they really took to him. So, the famous story with him is at a club called Bengal. They're a very small club historically, but at the time they were owned by a guy called Castor de Andrade, who is or was the most dangerous man in Brazil. And he was the head of an illegal gambling game called Jogo de Bicho. And Jogo de Bicho is an animal sort of gambling game played on every street corner in Brazil.
Jogo de Bicho is an illegal yet popular Brazilian lottery where players bet on animals. Yes, animals, like zoo animals. Each animal has a set of numbers linked to them, and the winning animal is determined by the official lottery. These people are placing bets in the black market. It's this whole underground system run by illegal bookmakers and the mafia.
If you got the right animals that day, you would win the numbers and all the rest of it. But it's still illegal in Brazil, but it's still played in every street corner. So Castor run that alongside a lot of other things.
Like I said, Jogo de Bicho is often linked to organized crime and corruption. And since the game is illegal, it operates outside government regulation. But my friends from Brazil say that none of this really matters. Even police officers play this street-level betting game. Castor de Andrade was the leader of the main Jogo de Bicho in the city of Rio de Janeiro. Rumor has it that he had over 100 policemen, public servants, politicians, judges. They were all working for him. But Castor de Andrade was also very involved in Brazilian carnival and soccer.
And Kaiser got invited into Bengal, did his usual, came in, brought in all the fun, all the party, used to bring a bus full of women to training. Castor loved him because he would start sorting things out for Castor and running errands for him and all those sort of things. And then it comes to the time after a couple of months in that they've got a friendly match. Castor wants Kaiser to play. He's fed up with him being injured. And so he gets the coach to find him the night before, and Kaiser's in a nightclub. And he says, you've got to play tomorrow, but don't worry, you'll be on the bench. And he said, but I'm injured. This is outrageous. This is breaking Brazilian law and all the rest of it. He was very good, very quick with his chat. And he said, look, you've just got to be there. He's Dr. Castor. You know what happens if you cross him. And, ergo, the insinuation is you won't be around the next day if you don't do what he says. This is dangerous man for a reason. So he goes to this game. It's hot. He's on the bench and they go 2-0 down very quickly. And then Castor de Andrade rings up the coach from the stands and says, I've had enough of this. Get our star striker on the pitch now. I want to see him. So Kaiser's filled with anxiety and he's been sent up to warm up to go on. And he's thinking, I can't do this. This is terrible. Like, I'm going to be caught here. You see how bad I am. I'm out. I've lost my ruse here. I'm actually enjoying this place. I like it. And so he's running up and down the sideline, warming up, and he hears some fans swearing him, singing and swearing him, saying he's terrible, and the rest of it. He senses his moment. He climbs the fence, jumps over the fence, and punches the main fan in the face. And then the referee comes over, breaks it all up, and then sends Kaiser off the pitch. He caused this havoc. Then he ends up in the dressing room at halftime. Then Castor de Andrade and his heavies turn up, and they're about to really go for him. And before they even get a chance to speak, and this is always the way with Kaiser, he's already worked out what to do. And he starts saying, Doctor, I love you so much, and your friendship means everything to me, and I hope you really enjoyed my time here. And I know you must think the world of me now, and I would accept me if you sack me today and send me away. But I just wanted you to know that what those people were saying about you was wrong. You're not a drug trafficker, and you didn't kill those people last week, and I had to defend your honour, so I'm absolutely disgusted. And Castor thought about it, smiled, and then gave him a 2-month contract extension.
Which is mind-blowing.
And there were so many little scams, and every day there was a scam for him.
Now, looking back, do you think that the football clubs that he fooled or were involved in this story, do they have resentment towards him, or do they look back and think, hey, we were in on the ruse too, it was all fun? Like, what was their reaction?
I think a lot of people didn't want to take part in the film, but it wasn't because they'd been tricked. It's because of what Kaiser brought to the party, if that makes sense. So his currency, he never stole money off anyone, or if he did, it would be very minor. But there's no track record of him going and defrauding people of the thousands or millions of pounds. What he wanted was the currency to keep up his pretense. I give you this small thing, I want one small thing back, right? Carlos Alberto Torres, for instance, said he had more influence in Rio de Janeiro than he did. Now, Torres is probably one of the top 5 footballers in Brazil of all time. So for him to say that, he said he couldn't get a dinner table on New Year's Eve at a restaurant. Couldn't do it. Kaiser could. He could get him the best thing and all the rest of it. But even the people that really didn't like him that much or had something against, even the people that didn't really had more taken off him than they felt comfortable with, couldn't hate him because I think they respected how he'd done it and all of those sort of things. He's the best con man of all time, but he's not a psychopath because he managed to keep it up for 26 years. And he then had to go and speak to a load of other people as well. And he said, I can't find anyone who really hates him. Usually in these stories, someone gets really hurt and no one really gets hurt. And I'm sure there must be some people at some time in its life, you're only talking to a limited pool of, I should imagine, hundreds of thousands of people he's interacted with. The beauty of Kaiser was that he kept it up for so long. Like his story does genuinely span all this time.
And was anyone ever really fooled? I mean, even while all this is happening, when he's faking these injuries.
The answer is no. No one really, really hated him that much, Well, I think people went along with it. It can happen in Rio de Janeiro because there's a thing called carioca, right?
Right.
And they have traditionally a certain way, or ginga, as they say in Brazil, way of moving, way of being, where everyone's a bit late. They're really good at storytelling. They come and they're the life of the party when they're there, and you can forgive them for their trespasses and all the rest of it because of their charm and their wit and all the rest of it. Even though he did play at clubs in Sao Paulo and all the rest of it, but once he's in the football community, it definitely wouldn't happen outside of Brazil. I'm not sure it would happen in Manaus or Recife or anywhere like that. I think it could happen in Rio, in that place where these stories come from.
It's an incredible story, but it took a turn for me, like towards the end, because you have this larger than life character. I mean, he's living the life of the best athlete, but also maybe the best celebrity in the world. I mean, he has everything he ever wanted. And then all of a sudden, that lifestyle could only last for so long. And his life now is so different, right? Like the way he is, you alluded to the fact that his health is not so great right now. And can you tell me about that? And is he having the ultimate midlife crisis where he's looking back at his life because he lived such a great life and thinking, wow, it's all downhill from here?
Without revealing too much about twists of the film and all the rest of it, we're making a documentary, not a drama. And we always sensed that there was something else there to pull out a little bit. And eventually we confronted him with, some realities that we had found out. And it kind of broke him, really. That's when I knew we had a real film. And the story was, and I really got the whole point of what this is, because here's a guy he's just turned 60 actually the other week. And for all of his life, he's lived a lie. And he's never had to front up to that. And also at the same time, all of his friends that he was looking good and being with, it's great to be around in the 80s and 90s because they're really famous and he's accessing all the parties that they can access and they're all having a great time and everyone looks young and lovely and all the rest of it. But then there comes a point where everyone ages and then life takes a turn. So what do you do when you can't be a fake footballer anymore? And you can't pretend to be a fake footballer anymore. At the end of, by the time he was sort of late 30s, he couldn't really do it anymore. And so his life had to change. And you see it now. I mean, I don't know about you, but I see it now. I'm in my early 40s now and I'm not culturally relevant anymore. And I'm not in the hottest parts of town and I'm not doing all these sort of things. So there's a bit of reality you have to come to yourself here. And this film, I guess, was the second win for him. But then when you're confronted with well, hey, what's true and what's not and all the rest of it, I think it kind of hurt him, And then I realized, what is this whole thing about? And it's not about the truth, but it's about, do you actually need characters like this in our society, in who we are? Do you need these mega storytellers that do these crazy things? Do you seek to be around people that can live a life you never can. And I found that fascinating. And that's why people you run a series called Pretend, right? I think people like these films because they're doing the things you would love to do, but you can never imagine doing. We didn't know what was true and what wasn't. And then you work out that truth doesn't really mean anything. It's just what people believe of their own truth. And then at that point, I never wanted to know in the end, where the story is the power of a story. He could tell a lie 3 times and it becomes the truth and becomes so powerful that everyone else in the world believes it and everyone repeats it. And then that power of that story can make such an amazing world.
I hope you enjoyed this story as much as I did. You can stream Kaiser, the greatest footballer never to play football, on Amazon Prime. Louis Myles also has a new documentary called Mighty Penguins. It follows the players of the Brentford Penguins, a team made up of players with Down syndrome and their families as they prepare to be guards of honor at the Premier League match. It's a funny, heartwarming film about the transformative power of sport. The film premiered at the Tribeca Film Festival in 2023 and is currently doing the festival circuit, so it's not streaming quite yet. This episode was written and produced by me, Javier Leyva. It was also produced by Allison Byrne, edited by the talented Punith Shenoy with the Podcast Pundits, and the theme music by Joe Basile with thechicken.net. That's it for today's episode. We will be back next week with a brand new episode. I interview a lady who's actively getting scammed.
And that's when the man in the restaurant, the cook, poisoned the FedEx guys. They had found out somehow, crooks had, that they were carrying a lot of money and everything. And so the cook poisoned them. One died. One almost died, and I guess the other one recovered okay, but there was 3 of them. Of course, they got all the money.
And I did everything possible to convince her to stop giving these scammers money. It's so frustrating. That's next time on Pretend.
At ZocDoc, we know being a healthy adult is like living in a video game. Every day has side quests, taxes, laundry, birthdays. And just when you're leveling up, you have to book a doctor. The insurance portal crashes. They put you on hold. Your doctor doesn't take your plan. Game over. We see you. So we made booking a doctor easy. Download ZocDoc. Search by specialty, insurance, and availability. Book instantly. No cheat codes required. Find a doctor you love with ZocDoc.
Creative